What would happen if we opened up the floodgates and said that we've discovered that there is a cause and effect relationship between vaccines and actual harm, and now with the statistics we have tens of millions in the U.S. alone. What do you do? How do you fix that? Is there any amount of money that could compensate those victims? And the answer is absolutely not.
But isn't it better to do the right thing and stop it
I agree.
before we injure the rest of America?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Greg Fisher. I'm the New York State Senate candidate for this district, Eastern Long Island. I have 4 children, the oldest of which is now 30. He is 30, and he was vaccine injured. His ability to communicate was severely impaired as a result of a vaccine injury. Though I don't understand all the pathology of it and what happened, there was a marked change in behavior, and he was very communicative before and very tactile and loving. It took a long time for him to even be diagnosed. It was during an era where autism was not well diagnosed, and of course there was a lot of parental shaming and saying that we were not setting limits for him or parenting him in the proper way. So me and my first wife had to endure a lot of that criticism as a result of ignorance. My son is doing much better now.
He's 30 years old now,
He's
isn't
30
he?
years old. He is way more tactile. He hugs, he's close. His communications abilities are better. They seem to be just getting better in the course of life. And but he has lost a lot of his life to being misdiagnosed. Of course, the injury from the vaccine. And
did you ever say to the pediatricians or the doctors that treat your son that you believe this is a vaccine injury?
I didn't know it at the time. And again, autism wasn't well diagnosed in those years. The number of times I heard that this was a parenting problem was amazing. I just had no idea what they were really talking about. I didn't think that we had any parenting problems, but it did put a lot of stress into the relationship, and I'm just grateful that there's a lot more awareness now, but I do recognize vaccine injury for what it is. Of course, I think there should be genetic testing before any vaccine is administered to anyone, without having genetic testing at least to discover those people that are perhaps egg sensitive, plus various gene anomalies, MTHFR gene anomalies. There should be full informed consent, as opposed to the blind recommendation that all persons, old persons, young infants, pregnant women, this misinformation that doesn't even match the cautions on the label, that needs to be cleared up. It's reckless, it's malpractice. I've even had, recently as this week, pharmacists say, oh, it's safe, it's not a problem, as if it was safe for everybody. And I talk about the inserts and the warnings on the inserts, and they say, oh, it's just not tested, but it's safe. And there's all this rationalization about why vaccines should be given, and people just in the profession, the health professions, just are not getting the message. I think it's prima facie malpractice. Nobody seems to want to take responsibility for the injury. Those same persons claiming herd immunity, which I don't think they really understand, but whatever their rationalization is, they're not willing to say, well, if I actually administer to somebody and they're injured, I should be responsible, that person should be responsible. No, that's a blind part to their argument. And the argument seems to end, well, nobody's responsible, that's just a random event. And I'm convinced it's not a random event at all. I'm convinced that there is something causal here. I believe that, of course, we have a toxicity curve with everything that's administered in terms of drugs or vaccines. So in no way should vaccines be given to infants. I think that's very dangerous. I personally don't believe that procedures should be applied to those that aren't proven fully fit to take them. I see that a big problem or the additives, the adjuvants that make the vaccines quote unquote more effective. So if we really think about this logically, it is reckless, absolutely reckless, on how we administer vaccines to especially infants, but to anybody, without testing and understanding their whole environment.
The profession you're going into as a senator, as parents, we go endless days after days after days trying to get in and speak to senators, explain what's going on. No one will speak to us. They turn
Yes.
their backs on us, and we get
Yes.
sent some deputy person
Right.
who just, you can see, is not even listening,
Mhm.
to the point it's so frustrating. I mean, if we're lucky, we get a photograph taken with them. We don't want a photograph. We want someone to stop this happening.
Of course.
So, is that something that you are pledging to do? Are you going to help us?
Yes, this is an important issue to me personally. I think it is a malpractice issue. My position has been that there needs to be full parental choice, but that's a baseline. But there needs to be professional responsibility by every person and every organization that's in the path of administration, not just the manufacturers, not just the doctors and the pharmacists, but the nurses, everybody. Somebody needs to say stop. Somebody needs to bring sense to it. I mean, even adults have side effects. But what is it to a young, still not fully mature immune system to have these side effects? And I think it's catastrophic from what I've seen. We're talking about a permanent, lifelong injury that will, more times than not, destroy a family too. The pressure of the afflicted person will cause a divorce and a loss of resources to that family. It does no good. So when you talk about weighing cost versus benefit, the costs have been dramatically under-calculated, and that has to be considered. Social costs, family costs, cost to the person is infinite.
And the siblings who will have to take care of
The whole family.
the worst are the senators that are doctor trained. You know, the paediatrician turned senator.
Okay.
Absolutely frightening, aggressive, and
do you understand why?
yes, of course we do.
Because they've injured so many people,
Right.
they can't look back. And they've been so reckless, they can't look back. They can only commit themselves to the path they are on.
Seen the names on the bus, and there's deaths, and it's horrific. It's
Right.
barbaric. It's the list goes on. But what I'm also interested in is you have 4 children,
Mhm.
of which did you say 2 are unvaccinated?
2 were unvaccinated. They were home births. They hold the unique distinction of being 2 intentional home births, and that's an extremely rare event in Suffolk County.
And they're developing beautifully.
Oh yeah, they're exceptional children, both of them.
Do you have any advice for parents trying to get the attention of their politicians, senators? I mean,
Well,
many parents
organizing,
tell me it's
yeah.
just then banging their heads against the wall. They just can't get anything.
It's quite true, and it's on so many issues. It's not just this. It's the same syndrome, whether it's talking about trade policies or anything. Politicians are very resistant to most issues. So it really is organize. It really is letter write, set up websites and Facebook pages, and get together and build your group, and then schedule visits as the tour has been doing. It's not an immediate thing. It happens very, very slowly. And ultimately, if you have no satisfaction and you have a resistant politician, you have no choice but to get them out.
All of you that have vaccine injured family members, will you please just stand up for a moment?